Well, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to ULT San Diego for the Aquarian series. This afternoon's presentation is the astrological sign of Leo, and this will be given to us by Kirk Gradine. Now, before we get started, a reading. This is from the Bhagavad Gita. This exhaustless doctrine of yoga I formerly taught unto Vivaswat. Vivaswat communicated it to Manu, and Manu made it known unto Ikshvaku. And being thus transmitted from one unto another, it was studied by the Rajarshis, until at length in the course of time, the mighty art was lost. O harasser of foes, it is even the same exhaustless, secret, eternal doctrine I have this day communicated unto thee, because thou art my devotee and my friend. Arjuna. Seeing that thy birth is posterior to the life of Ikshvaku, how am I to understand that thou wert in the beginning the teacher of this doctrine? Lord Krishna says, both I and thou have passed through many births, O harasser of foes. Mine are known to me, but thou knowest not of thine. Even though myself unborn of changeless essence and the Lord of all existence, yet in presiding over nature, which is mine, I am but born through my own Maya, the mystic power of self-ideation, the eternal thought in the eternal mind. I produce myself among creatures, O son of Bharata, whenever there is a decline of virtue and an insurrection of vice and injustice in the world. And thus I incarnate from age to age for the preservation of the just, the destruction of the wicked, and the establishment of righteousness. Whoever, O Arjuna, knoweth my divine birth and actions to be even so, doth not upon quitting his mortal frame enter into another, for he hath entereth into me. Many who were free from craving, fear, anger, filled with my spirit, and who depended on me, having been purified by the ascetic fire of knowledge, have entered into my being. In whatever way men approach me, in that way do I assist them. But whatever the path taken by mankind, that path is mine, O son of Pritha. Those who wish for success to their works in this life sacrifice to the gods. And in this world, success from their actions soon cometh to pass. Mankind was created by me of 4 castes, distinct in their principles and in their duties, according to the natural distribution of the actions and qualities. Know me then, although changeless and not acting, to be the author of this. Actions affect me not, nor have I any expectations from the fruits of actions. He who comprehendeth me to be thus is not held by the bonds of action to rebirth.
Kirk Gradine isn't able to be with us on Zoom right now, but he has prepared this really fine video, which we'll just watch with the slideshow and him speaking and reading, etc.
Greetings to everyone. If you have been following the Aquarian series over the last 7 months or so, you would have heard talks on the clock, on the zodiac, on Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and Cancer, all of which are intimately related to our theme this week. And you would also be somewhat familiar with the theosophical view on the zodiac, quite distinct from the common public conception of astrology, as you abundantly find outlined and in various media outlets and online. It was and is a divine science and one of the final mysteries, wrote H.P. Blavatsky, preserved for countless ages by the wise in secret sanctuaries and halls of initiation. Its universal symbology and multi-dimensional application cannot be apprehended through a mere intellectual effort, no matter how sophisticated or rigorous. This is because it is a living, revealed only by progressive stages on the Bodhisattva path, requiring complete selflessness of motive, unswerving dedication to the service of humanity, comprehensive self-knowledge, and the cultivation of the highest virtues. Similar to the principles we find in Platonic philosophy, the zodiac represents a fusion of knowledge and virtue. One without the other is incomplete. Besides divine charity, empathy, and compassion, unshakable patience, and a refined morality based on an ever-active voice of conscience, the preconditions for full assimilation of the zodiacal cycle would include all the stages of sevenfold dhyana and prajna, the awakening of the highest faculties of Buddhic intuition and vision available to humanity, capable of penetrating the veils of manifested nature. And again, this is because the zodiac represents a divine form of knowledge, which fuses the cosmic with the human, the macrocosm with the microcosm, which correlates the ever-present and ever-moving streams of galactic hierarchies represented by the stars, and the means by which they manifest through the spiritual hierarchies of our sevenfold planetary system in exact unison with the karma of humanity and each of its units. It is an intricate symbol system, also indicating the cyclic incarnation of seed and root manus of avatars, bodhisattvas, buddhas, and mahatmas, all working in perfect harmony, wrote H.P. Blavatsky, with the music of the spheres and the wheel of law. In short, it represents a kind of archetypal paradigm related to all cyclic time. Even the rich literature of the Theosophical movement pertaining to the zodiac, were we capable of understanding it, would only lift a small corner of the many veils and levels of meaning contained in each sign. Leo, or Simham in Sanskrit, is the fifth sign of the zodiac. In the calendar year of the sidereal system, it spans from August 17th to September 16th. Though considered a fixed sign in the tropical system, in the Vedic sidereal system, the true cardinal signs are those which correspond to the solstices and equinoxes. In the Aquarian age, this would be Leo and Aquarius for the fall and spring equinoxes, respectively, and Taurus and Scorpio for the solstices. In accord with the precession of the equinoxes, this cardinal positioning of Leo will prevail for the next 20.4 centuries. And as we mentioned in our discussion on the age of Aquarius, H.P. Blavatsky notes that the same astronomical cross rotated 90 degrees occurred at the start of Kali Yuga, now 5,125 years ago, demarcated by the death of Krishna, which, as we know, in exoteric Hinduism is considered the eighth avatar of Vishnu. And that if we understood what this meant, she said, we would have the key to half the religious mysteries of the world. That suggests also why HPB placed such critical importance on the first 5,000-year transition within the 432,000-year cycle of Kali Yuga. The central importance of the Leo hierarchy is further indicated by the fact that its ruling planet is the sun. Its element is fire in all its 49 aspects, and it corresponds to the Nidana Sadayatana, the six sense faculties. A few of the wide-ranging and multi-dimensional needs of each of these features, as well as the glyph of Leo relating to the serpentine awakening of Kundalini, are outlined in Helen Dahlberg's rich article on Leo, first published in Hermes Magazine in 1977. In addition to this article, as you will see, we also consulted The Secret Doctrine, Subbarao's challenging article on the Zodiac, and several articles by Raghavan Iyer, including The Fires of Creation, The Fires of Purgation, and Evolution and Consciousness, all of which can be found on theosophytrust.org. The word Leo is the Latin word for lion, also figuratively meaning courageous. The lion is one of the most widely recognized animal symbols in human culture and has been extensively depicted in sculptures and paintings, on national flags, and in literature and films. The oldest sculpture ever discovered was excavated in a German cave in 1939. It depicts a man-lion figure carbon dated to be 38,000 years old. Archaeoastronomers Martin Swetson and Alistair Combs offer evidence that this prehistoric sculpture is a symbol of the Leo constellation and records the turning of the precession. This, of course, would undermine the mainstream narrative that knowledge of the zodiac dates back only as far as the 3rd century before the Common Era. HPB asserted that zodiacal knowledge was part of that inheritance passed by divine preceptors to the earliest races of humanity more than 18.5 million years ago. As the king of beasts or keystone predator, the lion represents wise and powerful control over all the forces of untamed nature. The Chinese word for lion also means teacher, while the Egyptian symbol for Leo was a lion perched upon an outstretched serpent, a symbol of divine wisdom, immortality, and the self-born Logos. In parts of West and East Africa, the lion is associated with healing and functions as an intermediary between the clairvoyant seer and the hidden domains of nature. From many traditions, we are led to see the lion as a symbol of leadership and self-mastery, of kingship and heroism, one whose all-seeing eye, fearless determination, and powerful stature confidently guards and protects. One of the most stunning of the 7 wonders of the world still standing and still visited by millions of tourists each year is the monolithic man-lion Sphinx, aligned with all 9 pyramids of the Giza Plateau. His immortal gaze faces due east. Besides the obvious astronomical significance, this feature perhaps underlines what Theosophy asserts, that ancient Egypt obtained its sacred knowledge from prehistoric India. Due to inconclusive circumstantial evidence, contemporary Egyptologists associate the human head of the Sphinx with the pharaoh Khephren, but traditional star lore maintains it represented the constellation of Taurus. And H.P. Blavatsky links Taurus in one of its aspects with the first divine dynasties and states that Leo and Taurus are inseparable of the temple, protectors and preservers of the sacred mysteries. In the Merkaba of Ezekiel, the winged lion is one of 4 sacred animals, each a spinning wheel covered with eyes, suggesting again the 4-fold astronomical toss, the 4 central builders or dhyanis, each of the cardinal points defining aspects of the all-seeing glory, majesty, and manifestation of the divine mind of deity. Narasimha is the man-lion of Hinduism, the 4th incarnation of Vishnu, the restorer of righteousness and god of yoga, who transcends time and death, and who serves all beings with true justice through the Shiva-like destruction of all inner demons all selfish or self-seeking limitations and partialities. As is Vahan, Garuda is the emblem of cyclic and periodic time and is co-eternal with both Vishnu and the Mahakalpa. Simha, in one of its aspects, as found at this temple to the sun at Karnak, is the emblem of the solar cycle, representing the life and duration of the sun. The symbol of the lion is central to Buddhist iconography as well, from the first being associated with the teaching of the historical Buddha, whose lion's roar, quote unquote, renewed the Dharma and the Sangha on earth, while nourishing and sustaining beings in all three worlds. Along with the wheel, the stupa, and the Bodhi tree, the lion throne, such as this one at Sanchi, was among the earliest aniconic symbols of the awakened one. And in Tibetan Buddhism, the snow lion is both a symbol of the sacred land of Tibet itself and the lineage of Dalai and Panchamanas, bodhisattvic lineages who have renounced the bliss of nirvana, who out of great compassion and sacrifice preserve, protect, and teach the Dharma via the highest skillful means on behalf of all sentient beings. From the voice of the silence, the Lion of the Law, the Lord of Mercy, perceiving the true cause of human woe, immediately forsook the sweet but selfish rest of quiet wilds. From Aranyaka, he became the teacher of mankind. After July, which is another name for the Tathagata, had entered the nirvana, he preached on mount and plain and held discourses in the cities to devas, men, and gods. Leo, as a celestial cardinal sign of the zodiac, is emphasized by the position of the star Regulus. This is a Latin word for little king, also called Alpha Leonis within the constellation. The name Regulus was given by Copernicus, who believed that its brilliant white and blue light ruled the affairs of heaven as well as that of men. In India, Regulus is called Magha, meaning mighty or generous, while in Persia it is called Merjan, the center. As one of the four royal stars of Persian astronomy, it was always associated with kingship and royalty. It is also known as Qalb al-Asad from the Arabic, meaning the heart of the lion. The Ninevite tablet states, if the star of the great lion is gloomy, the heart of the people will not rejoice. Since Regulus marks the heart of the Leo constellation, and since Leo is the house of the sun, it is said to be the ruler of the human heart. In her article on psychic and noetic action, HPB called the heart the organ par excellence of the higher self. Modern astronomy observes that Regulus is actually a star cluster consisting of at least 4 stars, the main one of which, called Regulus A, is a binary. It is a rapidly spinning blue-white subgiant, about 3.8 times the size of our sun, but orbited by what is thought to be a white dwarf. The 2 stars take approximately 40 days to rotate around a common invisible center. For Earth observers in the Northern Hemisphere, Regulus is visible to the naked eye for most of the year, except for a few days in late August. In February, Regulus is visible for the entire night. Starting 2 weeks ago, in fact, on July 31st, Venus began its transit through Leo and will be doing so until August 25th. This is a relatively rare pattern that repeats every 243 years. Together with Fomalhaut in Aquarius, Aldebaran in the Eye of Taurus, and Antares in Scorpio, Regulus is one of the 4 brightest stars of the zodiacal belt, said to demarcate the 4 celestial cardinal points. Hubble and the James Webb telescopes have recently revealed that the constellation of Leo is also home to numerous bright galaxies, such as Messier 66, and the second largest known structure in the visible universe, known as the huge LQG, a collection of 73 quasars measuring approximately 4 billion light years across. In the secret doctrine, the zodiacal sign of Leo is connected with the universal mystery of the unmanifest logos, the nucleus within the heart of the invisible divine sun, the root essence of the formless triadic logos, both within and beyond the cosmos and humanity. In her commentary upon stanza 7 in volume 1, HPB states in the secret doctrine that Leo represents the highest or first order of the celestial beings, the chief of the hierarchies of creative powers which emanate or differentiate into the 3 and 4, becoming the 12 great orders of the zodiac and the manifesting dhyanis associated with the 7 sacred planets. From the secret doctrine, the highest group is composed of the divine flames, so called, also spoken of as the fiery lions and the lions of life, whose esotericism is securely hidden in the zodiacal sign of Leo. It is the nucleo of the superior divine world. They are the formless fiery breaths, identical in one aspect with the upper Sephirothal triad, which is placed by the Kabbalists in the archetypal world. It is through this sacred aperture, she writes, which streams the emanating spiritual light of the hidden sun. Again, from the Secret Doctrine, Volume 2, the nucleoles are eternal and everlasting. The nuclei, periodical and finite. The nucleoles form part of the absolute. They are the embrasures of that black, impenetrable fortress, which is forever concealed from human or even dhyanic sight. The nuclei are the light of eternity escaping therefrom. It is that light which condenses into the forms of the Lords of Being, the first and the highest of which are collectively Jivatma or Pratyagatma, said figuratively to issue from Param Atma. It is the logos of the Greek philosophers, appearing at the beginning of every new Manvantara. Thus, there is but one absolute upadi, basis, in the spiritual sense, from, on, and in which are built, for Manvantara purposes, the countless basic centers on which proceed the universal, cyclic, and individual evolutions during the active period. HPB elsewhere correlates Jivatma with abstract motion, the universal oversoul of Emerson, the one universal life, or Alaya Akasha, the divine spirit in humanity. When realized and embodied, the Jivatma is a Jivan Mukta, a perfectly purified soul, an adept or Mahatma who has reached nirvana while still in a body, the Krishna or Christ state. If reached in former periods of evolution, while also cultivating the Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya vestures, such a being becomes part of that galaxy of immortal kings in Shambhala, a master of compassion. This is the highest ideal known to humanity because of the great renunciation involved, and whose periodic incarnations form part of what HPB called the grandest of all mysteries, that of the Avatar and Great Brotherhood of Bodhisattvas. From the Secret Doctrine, Volume 1, page 571. In the esoteric and even exoteric Buddhism of the North, Adi Buddha, the one unknown, without beginning or end, identical with Parabrahm and Ein Sof, emits a bright ray from its darkness. This is the Logos first, or Vajradhara, the Supreme Buddha, also called Dorje Chan. As the Lord of all mysteries, he cannot manifest, but sends into the world of manifestation his heart, the diamond heart, Vajra Sattva, Dorje Sampa. This is the second Logos of creation, from whom emanate the seven, in the exoteric line the five, Dhyani Buddhas, called the Anupadika, the parentless. These Buddhas are the primeval monads from the world of incorporeal being, the Arupa world, wherein the intelligences on that plane only have neither shape nor name in the exoteric system, but have their distinct set of names in esoteric philosophy. These Dhyani Buddhas emanate or create from themselves, by virtue of dhyana, celestial selves, the superhuman bodhisattvas. These, incarnating at the beginning of every human cycle on earth as mortal men, become occasionally, owing to their personal merit, bodhisattvas among the sons of humanity, after which they may reappear as Manushi, human Buddhas. The Anupadika, or Dhyani Buddhas, are thus identical with the Brahminical Manasaputra, mind-born sons, whether of Brahma or either of the other two Trimurtian hypostases, hence identical also with the Rishis and Prajapatis. On a parallel line of meaning, as the leading quote from Hermes indicates, Leo is connected with the unfoldment of the motive power of evolution. Quote, will, wrote HPB, is the one and sole principle of abstract eternal motion, or its ensouling essence. Correlating with the Tibetan Phohant, the Greek Eros, and the Hindu Kamadeva, cosmic will is the force of compassion absolute, unborn and self-existent, universally present, whether there is a cosmos or not. It is that eternal perpetual motion which gives rise to the days and nights of Brahma, the seven eternities of cosmic manifestation spoken of in both Hindu and Buddhist texts, followed by the seven eternities of rest, the pralaya, each time at a higher level in an endless spiraling procession without beginning or end. Called the Great Breath, it is both diastolic and systolic, creative, sustaining, destroying, and regenerating, ever maintaining the course of involution and evolution in order to aid the development, growth, and expansion of awareness in every life atom. This is perhaps why Mr. Judge recommends to all aspirants the continual meditation upon the word, the omnipresent sound, resonant with the divine invisible sun, even while engaged in the common duties of daily life. It is this meditation, he says, when undertaken on behalf of the whole, that will eventually lead to a knowledge of the secret doctrine. This linking of the capacity for fearless kingship and seership, combined with the compassionate, all-embracing wisdom of the heart in harmony with the motion of the great breath, corresponds with the triune fires of Atma Buddhi Manas, humanity. The immortal higher triad in every human being is our innate bodhisattvic nature or inner God. It is the innately compassionate spiritual and moral genius within each of us, and a boundless reservoir of all knowledge, peace, and bliss, of creativity, love, and divine wisdom. It is inseparable from what we call the spiritual will, the ceaseless energy of learning and service, which unites every human being with the entire cosmos and all beings, past, present, and future. The middle principle of Buddhi, also called the sixth principle, is the vehicle of Atma and is likened to a mirror reflecting absolute bliss. Cosmically, Buddhi is connected with universal latent ideation, the highest Alaya Akasha or Daivi Prakriti, the light of the Logos, and the synthetic aggregate of the seven Dhyani Buddhas. As a human principle, Buddhi is the divine soul, harboring the collective wisdom of all souls, the basis of our deepest intuitions, soul memory, and conscience, as well as the faculty of discrimination. Only in conjunction with Atma does Buddhi properly reflect divine omniscience, and only in conjunction with Manas, principle of mind and thought, of choice and responsibility, of self-consciousness and self-awareness, does Buddhi become a discrete and active rather than a latent and passive principle. Thus, the immortal human monad is said to be a triad, the three in one. Buddhi is also called the seventh sense in the secret doctrine, from which is emanated the higher immortal mind. Higher Manas emits a ray at each incarnation, which descends to animate the fourfold vestures of incarnation and differentiates into the fivefold astrophysical senses, allowing for reason, sensation, and experience on the lowest and most illusory planes of existence. The differentiation of the senses from one into seven naturally led to the eclipsing of our innate soul vision in intuitive apprehension. This diffusion and descent into ignorance and illusion of Vidya and Maya, coupled with captivity to name and form, to an illusory sense of self, relates to the fifth nidana mentioned earlier. The overcoming of this deeply ingrained tendency to assign reality only to the most illusory and deceptive of planes is, of course, one of the central challenges and themes of the spiritual path. From the voice of silence, merge into one sense thy senses, if thou wouldst be secure against the foe. 'Tis by that sense alone, which lies within the hollow of thy brain, that the steep path which leadeth to thy master may be disclosed before the soul's dim eyes. As with any magnet, any globe, and any system of evolution, there is an electropositive pole and an electronegative pole, corresponding to the semi-duality of spirit and matter, of akasha and astral. The polar forces must be aligned in order for harmony to be established. In its descent into terrestrial human nature, cosmic will converts to the fires of attachment and corporeal passion, what the Buddhists call tanha, clinging to life. The untamed Leo nature with a bloated sense of personal destiny rushes forward to conquer with all the force of unleashed desire. This is the personal will acting on behalf of the lower pole, the vestures of incarnation and of self-admiring egotism. The more the lower ego is fed, the more it thirsts, and the greedier it becomes. From Mabel Collins in Through the Gates of Gold, not only is man more than an animal because there is the God in him, but he is more than a God because there is the animal in him. Once force the animal to its rightful place, that of the inferior, and you will find yourself in possession of a great force, hitherto unsuspected and unknown. The God as servant adds 1,000-fold to the pleasures of the animal. The animal as servant adds 1,000-fold to the powers of the God. And it is upon the union, the right relation of these two forces in him, that man stands as a strong king and is enabled to raise his hand and lift the bar of the Golden Gate. The spiritualized Leo, igniting the fires of aspiration and purgation, of tapas undertaken on behalf of suffering humanity, alchemically converts passion into compassion through the fire of altruism originating in Kuan Yin. Even a spark of that divine love can be fanned into a mighty flame, helping others to see. The fires of renunciation and purification are used by the yogi to reduce the lunar form to a zero on behalf of universal enlightenment. This includes the capacity to appear as nothing in the eyes of public opinion, to patiently accept all limiting conditions as necessary circumstances needed by the soul arising under karmic law, while inwardly sustaining and nourishing the highest ideals of selfless service. Kuan Yin is the Chinese term corresponding to the Sanskrit Avalokiteshvara, the Tibetan Chenrezig, who, as the snow lion, is not only the preceptor and fearless guardian of Tibet, but of the whole of manifestation. In stanza 3 of the SD, Kuan Yin is neither male nor female, but, quote, bright space, sun of dark space, unquote, the paradigm and pristine source of all creativity in the cosmos, the logos, or verbum of Parabrahm. From Raghavan Iyer, Kuan Yin is connected with the hidden power in every human being to produce a result that is beneficent. There is a latent Kuan Yin in every human being. It is the voice of conscience at the commonest level. It is the Chikala, the voice of the guiding dhyani of the developed disciple. At the highest level, it is Nada, the voice of the silence, the soundless sound, that which is comprehended in initiation and ceaselessly reverberates in the Anahata, the deathless center of the human body, transformed into a divine temple. In the Epitome of Theosophy, William Quan Judge points out that it is a misuse of terms to say that the spiritual nature can be cultivated. The real object to be kept in view, he says, is to so open up or make porous the lower nature so that the spiritual may shine through it and become the guide and ruler. The immortal God within us, he says, is cultivated only in the sense of having a vehicle prepared for its use, into which it may descend. For most people, the divine triad is not in the person, but hovers, so to speak, above us. It is always joyous, blissful, and peaceful, unconcerned and independent of all internal and external conditions and circumstances of the incarnated being. It continually partakes of the divine state, quote, conjoined with the gods, unquote, he says, feeding upon ambrosia. The aspiration of the student is to allow that light of knowledge to shine through and animate what we call the personality. While this is clearly the alchemical work of many lifetimes, it is also said that because of our divine heredity, even a beginning aspirant is innately capable of courageously releasing, through true benevolence and noetic thought, vibrations that can help heal and uplift all life atoms, thus contributing to the work of the Great Brotherhood. Again, from Raghavan Iyer. The idea that an unenlightened human being can effectively generate a seed of enlightenment is the central assumption behind the compassionate teaching of Mahatmas and Bodhisattvas, of Buddhas and Christs. A drop of water is suggestive of an ocean. A flashing spark or single flame is analogous to an ocean of light. The minuscule mirrors the large. Herein lies the hidden strength of the Kuan Yin pledge. What may seem small from the standpoint of the personal self, when it is genuinely offered on behalf of the limitless universe of living beings and of all humanity, past, present, and future, can truly negate the finality of finitude, the ultimacy of what seems urgent, the immensity intensity of what appears immediate. The human mind ceaselessly creates false valuations, giving ephemera an excessive sense of reality to uphold itself in a world of flux. To negate this tendency in advance and to assign reality only to the whole requires a profound mental courage. It requires, while one is alive, a recognition of the connection between the moment of birth and the moment of death, of the intimate relationship between the pain of one human being and the sorrow of all humanity. But it also involves a recognition that greater beings than oneself have taken precisely such a vow, have affirmed this pledge again and again. Therefore, one can invite oneself, however frail, however feeble, into the family of those who are the self-chosen, unacknowledged, but unvanquished friends of the human race. Along with loyalty, renunciation, compassionate service, and courageous leadership, Leo is connected with the capacities of the initiator and transmitter, the guru as both teacher and adjuster. As the fifth of 6 signs on the involutionary arc of Manvantara unfoldment in our round, Leo would roughly correlate to the beginning of the 3rd root race, where Manas has not yet awakened in humanity as a whole, where the differentiation of matter is that of an ethereal astral condition, and where humanity is still androgynous. It was also at this stage of involution, HPB wrote in the Secret Doctrine that, quote, the sons of wisdom produced by Kriya Shakti a progeny called the sons of Ad, or of the fire mist, and the sons of will and yoga. It was at first a wondrous being, wrote HPB, called the initiator. And after him, a group of semi-divine and semi-human beings set apart, she says, in archaic Genesis, in whom are said to have incarnated the highest dhyanis, munis and rishis from previous manvantaras, to form the nursery for future human adepts on this earth and during the present cycle. Every greater or lesser bodhisattvic incarnation, every great initiate, spiritual teacher, and moral reformer, from those of the divine dynasties to the messengers of the Great Lodge, who have invariably appeared in the last 25 years of every century of our current epoch, were linked to or instructed by the dateless and deathless sons of will and yoga residing in Shambhala. This is why Theosophia will one day be seen as the common basis of the esoteric teaching of the Vedas and Upanishads, of Hermes Trismegistus, of Krishna, Buddha, Shankaracharya, of Lao Tzu, Pythagoras, Plato, and Jesus, and a long lineage of mystics, philosophers, and sages, known and unknown throughout history. In the Secret Doctrine, these fiery lions of the law and lords of divine mercy are self-conscious embodiments of the one life, a perfectly ordered, radiant, and harmonic plane of consciousness at one with the higher triad in the whole of humanity. It constitutes an Akashic constellation of divine preceptors, dhyanis, bodhisattvas, buddhas, and adepts who watch over, instruct, serve, and protect humanity and the whole evolutionary stream of our planetary chain for the entire Manvantara. This suggests why meditation upon cosmogenesis, as given in the stanzas of Xian in the Secret Doctrine and its commentaries, can lead to an intuitive grasp and eventual activation of true spiritual imagination and boundless noetic creativity. While each of the other sacred planets all have 2 signs, which with rules the other. In the constellation of Cancer, she had 4 planets conjunct in the sign of Leo, the Moon, Mercury, Saturn, and Rahu, and all in the second house of wealth and resources. This is no doubt why Ellen Balborg writes, quote, "There can be no mistaking the influence of the fiery solar sign of Leo in the life of H.P. Blavatsky, who, in addition to her role as the parent of the Theosophical movement, exemplified the courage and nobility of Leo throughout her lifetime as a compelling teacher of soul wisdom," unquote. No doubt her lion heart and eye of Shiva saw deeply into the obstructing thought forms of the age, the deluded, confused, and oppositional character of the epoch, and of would-be disciples which circled around her. She knew intimately what illusions or delusions needed to be overcome in order to unlock barriers to the true service of humanity. As the noblest of trusted friends, the Guru reveals our defects, makes all hidden vices evident so that they can be recognized and confronted. This is a painful purging that must be endured in order to approach the threshold. Even as a child, HPB is said to have refused to politely coddle the personal ego and pretensions of adults around her. Some might have seen this as unkind, rude, or insulting. From a spiritual perspective, it may be the kindest of acts, the most compassionate of favors on behalf of the whole. The esoteric wisdom which H.P. Blavatsky was commissioned to bring into the world was an uncompromising blow to the status quo. Opposing forces were many, from Orientalists and less perceptive scholars, from proponents of exoteric religion or sectarian dogmatism, from spiritualism and materialistic science, but also from those whom she personally aided and helped the most. She welcomed them all into her orbit, knowing that many would betray her, for this was her calling. On invisible planes, no doubt the battle was most severe. It was not the Indian climate, explained her master, that adversely affected her health, but the forces which opposed the proper fruition of her incarnation and of the movement. Despite the severe and insidious opposition, because of the solar fires animating her inner vestures, she nonetheless manifested an indomitable spiritual will to fulfill that mission given her by the Great Brotherhood, to awaken Buddhi Manas of the race, to lay down the global lines for the reestablishment of the mystery schools in the West, and to partially unveil a hidden treasure house, a panacea for all the ills of mankind, the seminal outlines of Theosophia. As she affirmed in the final pages of the Key to Theosophy and elsewhere, and as Robert Crosby repeatedly reminded associates of ULT, all this was done in preparation for the Mahatmic current and messenger of the 1975 cycle, so that the 20th century would find a literature and a community of students in place, ready to welcome the new torchbearer of truth. Think how much one to whom such an opportunity is given could accomplish.
Okay, well, thank you all for listening and watching. And Michelle Christie has very kindly offered to step up and help answer questions and to moderate the remainder of the meeting. And it is possible that Kurt Green himself will call in if he hasn't already. Michelle, take it away.
Judy, go ahead.
Hello. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question. That was a really wonderful presentation by Kirk, and I hope he's feeling all right. I wonder about this idea of Leo being the motive power in evolution. That's a quote from Hermes. I wonder if you could explain that better. They talking about the drive for the soul to attain to a more divine status. What does that mean, and why is Leo symbolizing that?
Well, I think the quote that comes from from Helen Valborg. And I believe she says that Leo witnesses the awakening of the motive power of evolution, which lies dormant in the sign of Taurus. And so if you happen to read many of the other articles from Helen Valborg, she speaks about Kohat in these different signs. And so I think at this point of evolution, where the sense faculties have been lit up, along with the mind. So that would be Shadayatana, which is the 6 sense faculties. At this point, there is the conscious connection between spirit and matter. And so I think this motive power is speaking about Kohat and is also connected with desire or eros. Now, in her articles, Helen speaks about Kohat being latent in Taurus. It becomes activated in Leo. In Scorpio, it becomes more indrawn. In Sagittarius, it expands. And then in Capricorn, it becomes hardened. And finally, in Aquarius, it becomes a transcended. And Aquarius is directly opposite the sign of Leo. And so you could say that these kind of hidden powers, so to speak, of consciousness that are awakened in Leo, they become fully flowered in the Aquarian man, who is able to subdue those passions that become, sparked in the sign of Leo. And the Aquarian has become individuated and is able to consciously, self-consciously use Kohat as an instrument to help on the evolution of mankind.
All right, thank you.
Yes. I have a question, Michelle. Monica here. Is it possible to be more influenced? I'm just wondering if I understand what was said about the configuration of HPB's chart. Is it possible to be more influenced by the number of planets in a sign in someone's chart than their actual sun sign? Is that what we're to understand was expressed by Kirk?
Well, I think he's speaking about it. It's became very common knowledge that HPB was Leo, but that's traditionally looking at the tropical zodiac in which her sun would be in Leo. But if you're going off of the Vedic system, which I find to be more accurate in regard to discerning the personality and also the journey of the soul in incarnation. And so HPB's sun is actually in the sign of Cancer, but she has, I think Kirk said that there were 4 planets in Leo, but I think that's a bit up to debate because no one really knows the birth time of HPB. It's given as August 11th or 12th. And, it's said that she was born at midnight between August 11th, 12th. I've seen other times early in the morning on the 12th. And so if she was born earlier on the 11th, she would have the moon in Leo as well. But I think it's safe to say that she at least had Mars, Saturn, and Mercury in the sign of Leo. Now, if you're trying to determine the potency of planets in a sign, or in a person's chart, one person may have kind of a weaker expression of the sun. It could be in a sign where that expression of the planet becomes weaker, as opposed to a position of a planet in another sign, especially if that's in its home house or home planet. And it also depends upon the geometry, the matrix between the relationships between different planets in a sign. Now, especially when one has several planets in one particular sign, like HPV does, you can definitely say that there's going to be a stronger quality there, a stronger expression going on with those particular planets. And especially if there's what's called a conjunction, and that's going to be if a planet is within a roughly 3 degrees or so of another planet. And so you can kind of think about that as being the two planets are kind of on top of each other, and it's a lot more potent. They blend with one another rather than being on their own. So it's very unique to the particular case. So I hope that helps.
It does. Thank you. Thanks for that.
I have a question. I haven't formulated this question properly yet, so if it doesn't go anywhere, then we can move on to the next one. But I was thinking about when Kirk was talking about Regulus, and then it turns out when you look closer, it's like a cluster of stars. Minimally, it's that big star, and then there's this dwarf one, and they're kind of going around this invisible center and all this stuff. And that Regulus has to do with the heart. And I think he said that when the heart of Regulus is not strong or bright or whatever, then the people aren't as happy. Somehow it has to do with the heart of things. And but I was also thinking, we were talking about Martin Luther King earlier, and then we were talking about other beings that were around him. And it's always like when you think it's one person, it turns out that it's a cluster or a galaxy of beings that seem to incarnate or something. Like Gandhi's the same way, and other things that are HPV. There was a whole galaxy of beings around her, including Mahatmas. But I was just wondering if there's anything to be said about that, about the heart, and how it's like a system of beings. Anyway, you can tell I haven't developed my question very well. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, well, when first hearing about Regulus, my thoughts kind of went to the idea of Buddhimanas and Kamamanas, this the dual star going on there.
Okay.
But especially because in mythology, there's this connection between Leo and the red lion and the white lion. And the red lion is kind of the Kama-manasic principle. Kama becomes activated there in Leo. And the white lion is said to be the expression of the higher dhyani, of the higher self working through. And it's very critical in Leo, of which kind of lion one is choosing here. And I think that's why Kirk brought up the article on psychic noetic action, as well as the correspondence between the electric fire of magnetism. But I think that this idea of having I guess, of seeing one's identity differently. And
Mhm.
this really becomes fully formed in Aquarius, I think, because I always look at these two signs together, Leo and Aquarius. And in Leo, you have this concept of, the universal selfhood. And in Aquarius, it's more the self amongst the unity, but the soul has become individuated at that level and one with the higher self. It's the union there. And so if one can think of one is trying to act or allow the solar fire to permeate through and to work through the lunar vesture. I think one can really think of I guess that Dhyani is a whole host of souls together. But I would say that I think at this point in evolution, Leo is kind of waiting for the full emergence of Aquarius for that kind of activity to take place. I hope that helps.
No, it's very, very revealing. Would you say that Leo in some ways, maybe Taurus, but Leo is in some ways the beginning of individuation and Aquarius is the culmination,
Yes.
or not? You would?
Definitely. Yeah.
And how is that could you remind about how the Taurus is the beginning of that? Even though we heard a fine presentation on Taurus, but nevertheless, I need to be told again.
Well, I believe in Helen Valborg's articles, she goes into this, beginning at Aries, we have this primal spark, this sacrificial emanation of the soul incarnating into this, the fall of spirit into matter, essentially. And we can look at this in terms of the soul and also in terms of cosmic evolution as well. And then in that primal spark it kind of spreads throughout the Akasha. And this is what takes place in Taurus. Taurus is associated with the mother and Bach as well. So you kind of abstractly imagine, this spark being spread throughout the Akasha. And then in Gemini, this is where consciousness or Mahat comes into being. And as well as androgynous consciousness. So that's where we have the twins in Gemini. And then in Cancer, that consciousness gets impressed. And so that's where we have the astral plan that unfolds, as well as the Namarupa, the name and form. And so in Leo, this spark returns because we now have the Namarupa and the astral. I believe in his presentation, he spoke about Leo being an aperture. And kind of an aperture for the unmanifest to become manifest. And it's very mysterious, of course, how that takes place. I believe it's in the Leo article, she speaks about the triadic fires of Pavaka, Suchi, and Pavamana, I believe. And so because we now have all of the 5 sense faculties plus the mind, which constitutes the 6 faculties of perception, this it kind of brings on this element of desire, because now there is sense perception and objects. Yes, and I think there's another another hint she has in her article where she speaks of, in Leo, the fire which builds is also that which releases.
Thank you. Does there anyone have any other questions or comments? I mean, I could talk to Michelle for hours, but
Yeah.
you-
Go ahead, Ken.
Uh, yes, yes. Thanks for that wonderful video and the commentary so far. I was wondering about that one quote from The Voice of the Silence, that once we go past the sixth senses, we get to the seventh sense, but then we can merge them back into one sense. And that with that one sense, and there was a curious thing about it lies in the hollow of the brain. I'm thinking, could that be like where the pituitary gland is, the sella turcica, those little bone, like a little cup where the bone holds onto the pituitary, and that somehow that single sense awareness uh, leads us to a greater understanding. I wasn't quite sure what exactly that is, and in the video, Kurt talked about some recommended meditations. Would those kind of help us to get back to this one sense, or like the nada, the voice of the silence?
Well, I'm not sure if I can speak very well to this question, but the voice of the silence, I think, puts it somewhat clearly, where there's that whole passage about focusing, fixing one's whole attention upon the master in the heart. And so I'm not too sure if I can speak very much to that question. Does anyone else have any comments they'd like to add to this?
I think one connection, Michelle, could be the idea of the heart in Leo, and how that there were like multiple layers and definitions and identities of heart. And then with this star Regulus, which, as you just were talking with Jonathan about, the one actually from Leo going to the Aquarian multiplicity, how modern astronomy has shown that the one star Regulus, or the Arabic name, the heart of the lion, is actually 4 stars. So it's really a group. That could be.
Yes, there's a comment about the heart, the eye, and the sun, and that this is a clue to the fiery lions that lie in Leo. Now, another important star I think that wasn't mentioned is Denebola, and this is at the tail of Leo. But I think that this is also an important star to think about in regard to this. And it seems when one reads the Leo article by Helen Balborg that she's kind of making a hint or a clue there in regard to the eye as well. But did David Grossman, did you have a comment?
and just one thing, we have to end the meeting at supposedly 5:45, but let's say 5:50 at the latest, just because we have to use the same computer, because Monica's going to be speaking for GEMS in a few minutes.
Okay.
Oh, just that I thought it was interesting that Kurt's talk, it really showed the lion throughout all the different spiritual disciplines and groups. He showed all those different pictures and different groups that maybe we have to learn to internalize the zodiac. These stars, they're not out there. It's really a map of our being. Yeah. And maybe that's what we have to focus on more. Like, I don't know. Whether HPB was a Cancer or a Leo, it doesn't really matter much. What she was, what she brought. And I think sometimes we can get kind of fractionated looking at this map of the zodiac in pieces, and stuff like that. And somehow we have to look at that, get back to what Ken was talking about, that there's that one sense that we go toward, the unity of life, the unity within all of us, the Atman. anyway, a few thoughts along that line. Yeah, but he really did a beautiful coverage of the second object. Really, Ken did, and Kurt in the way he presented this. It was very broad based and right. And very theosophical in that sense. Yeah. Anyway, that's about it.
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
That's a really, really important point when we're looking at the zodiac, is that it's all a whole system, and it's about these complex relationships together. So we shouldn't be isolating things in particular. Robert Moore.
I had a quick point if anybody wants. Is there time? Hello?
She's had.
Yes, go ahead, Betty.
Yeah. So the other thing that's important, you said she was born on either August 11th or 12th. So that's like the peak closing of the Lionsgate portal, which is like the star, our sun, the star Sirius, and Orion has an alignment that's similar to like the Giza pyramids. So that seems like a very important attribute to saying, she has these Leo qualities, even if she's a Vedic Cancer, because she's born right at the closing of the Lion's Gate. And, the people who are into numerology, they like the number 11 as the gates as well, because it stands for Janus, the god of the future and the past, the doorways, and things like that. So it just seemed like an interesting aspect of that. Okay.
Thank you very much. Are there any more questions or comments? Desiree?
Hi, thanks so much, Michelle, for providing all this background. I was curious about his reference to, excuse me, Leo being a kind of witness period. And does that somehow relate to this idea of an aperture or a reflection? And in what way? Because I know he brought up the idea of the third round in nascent humanity. And is he referring to when they start to get a glimpse of themselves, slightly objectified? Is that what he means by witness?
I couldn't really say what he's meaning by that. But I think especially with the way that Kirk superimposed the zodiac onto the diagram of the root races, I think that it's a little bit unclear where exactly the lighting up is taking place. But I think that this idea of this aperture in Leo one kind of thinks of the passage of the Great Sacrifice in The Secret Doctrine. When thinking about this time, if we want to think about it in terms of time, rather than archetypally, this kind of emergence, this full emergence taking place. The previous 4 signs are being preparatory in that way, but this full emergence of the Jivatma manifesting through vestures on earth, I think, and what that time must be like, or that kind of golden moment must be like. I would imagine that we can think about the kind of silent watcher, or this sacred moment, I guess, of heaven incarnating on earth.
Suddenly becomes experiential.
Yeah.
Is it okay if we just?
And everything that goes with that as well. You know, all of the,
Okay.
oh, sorry, sorry, John.
Monica's got a question.
Thank you.
Just thank you. Just one quick question, Michelle. I'm wondering, are in terms of the zodiac, listening to something that you just said, is each sign a preparation for the next? Does it work that way at all, or is it wholly due to skandhas and karma generated?
Do you mean in terms of the soul?
The dharma of each zodiac or each planet, is it preparation for the next one in sequence somehow? Or is that just too linear?
I think I'm a little confused. Do you mean in terms of evolution? Of proceeding?
Yes.
Zodiac?
Yeah, and in terms of what is given to work through in each sign, is the previous one preparation for the next one?
So I think you're speaking about in relation to a soul, the
Yes.
journey of the pilgrim soul.
Yes.
Well, that's a really interesting question. I think it could possibly be that we do go around in sequence, but I don't think that it's going to be showing up in the astrological chart the way that we might think it would. I don't think we can look to the sun sign to determine that at all. You know, I've wondered very much if we can look to the ascendant sign, perhaps. You know, how slowly does one move around the zodiac? Do we go around more than once at different levels? Because you can definitely tell that, I mean, just knowing all range of human beings, that one particular soul that is perhaps under the influence of one sign may be working on very different things than another soul that's also under the influence of the same sign. So don't think it's very complex, the workings of karma, in that, in especially trying to discern and read in that way. And I think that really only initiates and adepts can really discern
Which is which?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
A few things. I guess we're out of time. Thank you, Michelle, for being so able and willing to help us out with this. And thanks to Kirk Radin for putting together pretty astonishing, amazing, incredible. I could keep going presentation on our website, which is theosophysd.org, or you can just go on YouTube and type in Aquarian Series Leo and things like that. You can find it. So we've got at least, I think, about 200 videos on YouTube on our channel. So thank you all very much for being here and for your thoughtful questions. And thank you again, Michelle, so much.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you all for your questions.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Michelle, so much.
So good.